I'm Jenayne Jenneker, and this is Tarsha Leigh Jenneker.
Tarsha Leigh Jenneker, I am.
I'm currently, and proud to say, I'm 26 and I'm a business owner. I do catering and event planning. Very unexpected in life, but that's where I am.
And I am currently a BCom law student at WITS, and I also own my own business, which is an e-commerce clothing store. My online store will be launching very soon, so very proud of that. Myself and Jenayne are one of the few people you'll meet who have experienced almost every form of education. So initially, we started out at government school, which was Discovery Primary, both of us. My first memory of school was standing in a line to collect my stationery pack, and all the parents were saying, "Oh, I hope my kid doesn't go into that lady's class. Apparently she's evil." And I get to the front, and they assigned me to her. So that was pretty terrifying.
It was already a
me.
bad start. And then for me, mine was being so excited to start school and have friends, and a class would start, and the teacher might maybe speed up for me, and I would raise my hand and be like, sorry, miss, sorry, we have to continue with the lesson because there's a structure and there's a time limit. So I would leave feeling very defeated and frustrated and get home, and then in turn I had to have my parents reteach the whole lesson to me. So that was the foundation of our first experience of schooling.
Yeah.
And then we moved to Lady Brand and went to a private Christian school, which was a few horrible years in schooling.
Yes.
Because they believed that children shouldn't have an opinion. There's a specific way to do things and a specific way to believe in things. So more often than not, I found myself in the principal's office because I had to be the why kid. Everything was, Jenayne, do this, but why? Jenayne, do this, why? And your experience?
So my experience at the Christian school in Lady Brand was that, so first of all, I only found this out a few years ago, but they told my parents that I have ADD. And they wanted my parents to put me on medication, and thank God they decided not to, because clearly I don't have a problem. And when I was looking back at my old report cards, they often said, Tarsha always wants to know why, and after she does something, she always wants to find out if she's done the right thing, and I always wanted to interact with the learning that I was experiencing, and for them that was a negative thing. So we had the same experience that we would be taught something, and then we would go back home and our parents would have to reteach us. So our parents made the decision to basically cut out the middleman, and that's where our homeschooling began. I was very happy to be homeschooled.
Whereas I kicked and screamed and cried for the first couple of months because I didn't want to lose my friends. I didn't want to miss out on sports activities. And I was like, am I going to be deemed weird because now I'm studying from home, and there was this whole vision on it. So I fought through the first couple of months, but my parents weren't giving in. They knew what was best for us in their hearts, and I think they could see that we were individuals that looked like rebels to a normal system, and so this was their solution. So eventually, I gave in to the fight, and I decided, okay, let me embrace it. And I discovered skills that I would have never discovered in a classroom if I was there from 7 a.m. until 4 p.m. and having no time to experiment.
But obviously with homeschooling comes the normal questions that all the children here are going to experience. You meet someone, oh, you're homeschooled, how do you make friends? Yeah. I get, why are you so normal? And I'm like, what is normal? So just because I don't conform to what is considered the normal education system, I'm expected to not be able to socially interact with people. But we proved a lot of people wrong. From the homeschooling, I became an unschooler, not intentionally. It went from, I realized at some point that I don't want to go to university. Well, that's what I thought. So I was like, if I'm not going to go to university, why am I studying? So my parents gave me the freedom, and I became an unschooler before they even intentionally planned on unschooling me. And for a few years, I didn't do any formal education. but that brought so many opportunities. We started modeling. We hosted a radio show together. I managed a craft store at the age of 16. I went on and became the first princess in Miss SA Teen. We had the opportunity to be free to explore and figure out what it is that we really want to do. Eventually, somehow, I got a part-time admin job for a friend who was working at a law firm, just doing their filing, and she couldn't go do the filing that week, so I went to do it, and somehow I fell in love with law. But then I was stuck in the situation where in order for me to be a lawyer in this country, I am going to have to get into the education system. So now, I hadn't done any work at all, no subjects for years. But I knew that if I wanted to get into a university to study law, I'm gonna have to buckle down and do it. And that just shows you that after years and years of not doing formal schooling, I somehow aced my GEDs and my SATs in about 6 months of studying. And then the battle began, which Jenayne went through as well, of getting into a formal institution as a homeschooler.
Yeah, because I think with me, I always pictured going to varsity. I wanted to be in university. So I went to advisors and gave them, because I did formal homeschooling because I knew that's what I wanted. And I gave them everything that I'd done and I got laughed at. And was like, but we don't recognize this. And I was like, okay, but it's an international homeschooling system. And they were like, I'm sorry, it's not good enough for WITS. So in turn, they told me to do my SATs. I did my SATs and I did quite well. And they still said it wasn't good enough. And told me to do a bridging course. So I went to Damlin and I did my business management and marketing, which worked out in the end because it helped me start a business and know what to do. So our lives swapped in that sense, as I wasn't good enough to get into WITS, and Tarsha...
I refused not to let them
it.
let me in. So same story with me. When I decided that I want to study law, I was like, I am going to aim for the stars. I'm not going to settle. I want to go to the best law school in Johannesburg, and I set my mind to it. I went to WITS and I went to consult. I explained, same story, I'm a homeschooler, this is what I've done, here's the work. It was a bit more difficult for me because for a few years I hadn't done anything. And that is the first time I realized that WITS really didn't want to let me in. They kind of made it almost impossible. They would tell me, okay, we need you to do your GEDs. I left, I went and done my GEDs. Then I went back. Here's my GEDs. Oh, now we need you to do your SATs. Okay, you should have told me that initially. I went, I done my SATs. Done great in both of them. Went back to WITS. They were like, no, we need you to be accepted by an American university. Since you're doing an American system, if we can see that an international university is accepting you, it will help us to see that you followed the right path. Done that, got accepted into a university in America. Eventually, at my last consultation, before I applied to the university in America, I sat and I looked at the consultant and I said, one day, I am going to get into your university. As much as you're kicking and screaming, you don't want to let me in, I'm going to get in, and when I leave, you will be proud to say that Tarsha Jenneker went to WITS University. And that is what happened. Somehow, as a homeschooler and a person who didn't necessarily believe in this formal institution, I managed to go in and excel. I ended up on Golden Key. I'm the top of my class in the law school. And when people find, up to this day, I'm in my 3rd year now, up to this day when people that have been friends with me for years speak to me and they mention, oh, what did you do for your matric? Then I was like, guys, I was homeschooled. And they can't fathom that someone who didn't go through the formal education system is doing so well in university. And it just shows you that if you put your mind to it, you can conquer.
Yeah, because one thing about us as homeschoolers and unschoolers is that you're forced to become independent at a young age. You're forced to decide what you're going to do. And it surprises a lot of people that when you've figured out as a young kid, listen, I have a passion for this, I love doing this, and why do I need the maths specifically or the science specifically if that's nothing that I'm interested in? You just somehow, you do it because as a young person and as a human, it's human nature to progress in life. You want to move forward. And a lot of people always doubt, like, oh my word, if you don't have all that formal stuff, are you going to become anything great? But greatness will be on your terms. You will decide what your greatness is. It's not going to be a structure that schooling has decided, well, these are the steps that you need to do to become successful. And when I had no idea what I wanted to do, I just knew that I wanted to own a business. I went and did a million different jobs. I traveled the world. I gained worldly experience on my own terms. I saved money, and I bounced 1,000,001 ideas on my parents, and they were there. They listened, they advised me. They even helped me start up a few of those businesses. Most of them failed, but it was okay because I was experimenting. I was trying to find out who I was. And then I went to go work for a catering company, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really good at this. Like, they gave me the chance. They didn't say, okay, what degree do you have? Where did you study? And they gave me that chance, and I excelled in it. And I was like, I'm actually really good at this, and I can do it. And I'm doing it. I'm respected in the industry. I'm recognized in the industry. I've done events for very well-known
Justin
people.
Bieber and Drake and J. Cole and...
So I've done a lot of things that surprised me because I was very skeptical, and I was like, but if there's no structure and there's no professional telling me how to do something, how am I going to do it right? So that's where we were very different, because she just believed, and I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure. And now I have the freedom to be with my child when I want to be with my child. I have the freedom to work from home. And the most important thing is that I'm happy. Like, my parents can look at me and understand that they haven't failed in any way because they took me out of schooling. Like, I'm happy.
And it wasn't easy. It was a fight. You would have our uncles and our aunts speaking to our parents weekly, like, how can you do this to your children? And they felt like our parents were basically setting us up for failure in somehow. And people very easily can make you feel like you're lazy or you aren't intelligent just because you aren't following the path that they're following, and you aren't doing it the way they've decided to conform. And so it was a battle to feel like, okay, I'm sure they struggle to feel like they aren't doing the wrong thing, but I'm hoping that now they realize that they've done the right thing by letting us kind of follow our natural learning journey.
Because, I mean, they've always also been against any type of institution, so it was a big risk that they took. Yeah. And guys, we can honestly say that we are successful on our terms. We are happy with what we're doing and where we are. And if someone had to ask me if I would change my path, I wouldn't change the fact that I experienced different schoolings, because now I'm wiser for it. I know the difference. I know where your benefits are and where you don't benefit. But if I had to choose one or the other, I honestly would have chosen unschooling, because even with my 2-year-old, he is taught things by himself. He learns by himself. He doesn't need me to sit there and say, okay, Kai, this is orange, and this is green, and this is how you write your name, and he will pick it up by himself. So if I'm reading a book, he wants to pick up a book and read, and he can say, Mom, this is how you spell your name. And it's just natural. Even small things like potty training, he's doing it by himself. And it's just let it be. Let him live and find what he's interested in, and then let him do what he's interested in. And as parents, I think you guys have lived longer than us, so share your knowledge. Don't enforce it on your beliefs, don't enforce it on your kids, but share it, have it open there, so that your kids feel comfortable to say, oh, Mom, I don't feel smart today, or I feel like a failure today. Dad, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I want to make money so that I can live. Let your advice be there for them. And it will surprise you how quickly they pick up skills and how they learn the most amazing talents from just being free.
And I can imagine as parents, I'm not a parent yet, but I can imagine for my parents, it was very difficult for them when you don't believe in institutions and your daughter comes to you and says, hey, I want to go to Wits. And I think at that point I know my mom probably felt a lot of guilt, because she was very concerned that this is what my daughter wants to do, and she's not going to be able to do it because she wasn't in the formal education system. But we made it work, and it's very difficult because the world we're living in now is not as accepting to this as it should be. And it's difficult to be the way that we are and figure out how you're going to fit in the world when they haven't come to realize. It's like we're 10 years ahead, and eventually they're going to get there, and eventually they're going to realize that this is how learning actually should be. But right now, it's difficult because it's not at that point yet. So when you decide that you want to progress with your life in a specific way, if you decide you do want to find a job that requires a degree, or you do want to go to university, then you sit with this problem because they haven't opened up their minds yet. But it just shows that somehow I got in, and I've proved them wrong, that as a homeschooler, that turned into an unschooler, I've managed to get into the system, I've excelled, and when I get out, I'm hoping that one day you'll be able to be a lawyer without going through the schooling system or without going to law school. And yeah, hopefully the world will catch up with all of us one day.
But for right now, I think because we live in this world, there are certain aspects we'll have to bend in just to achieve what we personally want to achieve. Do you guys have any questions for us?
I know you spoke about all the challenges you had and about getting into WITS or any formal institution with your alternative education, but I would like to ask, do you think it gave you an advantage as well?
In terms of getting into university, I would say that if I wasn't unschooled, I wouldn't have had the perseverance. Because if you're not being taught, but you want to learn something as an unschooler, you're going to find out how to learn it. So if I hadn't been unschooled and for some reason, say I was in the normal schooling system and my marks weren't good enough, I would have given up and I would have said, okay, well, I can't get into WITS. I wouldn't have thought, hey, let me go right again. Let me get higher marks. And then also, once I got in, I realized that the greatest advantage I have at university is that my whole life, I've known how to teach myself. And that's what you have to do at university. The lecturers don't sit there and baby you like what happens in school. So where other students were failing because they had to go home and learn the work, they didn't have that skill of learning by themselves. That's what made me excel, because I knew that I've got this. Like, I know how to teach myself. Give me the book, I'm going to do well. So I feel like I actually have an advantage over most of the students that were in the schooling system.
I think character-wise, I agree as well. You're on a whole other level. If you look at an 18-year-old that's been unschooled to an 18-year-old coming out of school, you can't even compare the two. But I mean, academically, you finished the entire school thing in 6 months, where other kids need to do it in 12 years.
Yes.
I just think that's amazing.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any other questions with regards to, as a parent, as the kid here? Yes.
So I would like to hear from you, which parts of that journey was more inspiring and which were the harder parts of that?
Do you want to answer my answer? In the beginning, I wouldn't say that the beginning stages of my homeschooling were positive. Even though I was excited to be homeschooling, there was a lot of frustration. When we were still following like a strict curriculum in the beginning, there would be fights with my mom because she's amazing at math. And she would try to teach me math, and I wouldn't get it, and she would tell me, like, go take a walk. And that stage, literally, go take a walk and come back and we'll try again. And that stage for me was very frustrating. If I had to stay in that stage, I don't know if I would be where I am now, because I would say the growth in my journey came when my parents realized, I think first it became, okay, you're old enough now, I don't necessarily have to manage your curriculum. And then they realized I just wasn't doing my curriculum. And they accepted it, and that's where my growth came, because it stopped going from feeling like I'm not smart enough, because even though my friends in school are doing what I'm doing, but they're doing it with a structure, and they're getting these marks, and they're being externally examined. So my friends would come to me and say, oh, what did you get for this test? And I'd be like, well, I didn't do that test. So that part was very difficult. When I went into unschooling, it opened up an entire world for me. So first there were the moments I was just relaxing, I was chilling, I was eating food and watching TV and doing nothing. And then somehow one day I went onto Gumtree and I was like, I want a part-time job. I was 16. I had just turned 16. I knew I was the legal age to get a part-time job. I went onto Gumtree, found a part-time job to manage a craft store, and at 16 years old, I was the manager of this entire store, and it was so nice because I learned how to interact with people. I was doing stock take, I was packaging things and being the cashier. And I think that experience opened my mind up to the fact that, you know what, I can make it without schooling. And from there, I realized like the world is my oyster. And that's why we got to experience so many things that people that are in school would never have been able to experience. We wouldn't have had the modeling careers we've had. We wouldn't have been able to host a radio show at the ages that we did. That would have never happened if we were in schooling, because you can't attend castings if you're at school, castings are at a certain time. You can't go to it, or you're missing out on your education. So my path was up and down. It was up and down, and it was also quite difficult when I did decide I wanted to study law, because I didn't know which way it was going to go. But I put my head down, and it actually took me from the time I first went to WITS to the time I got into WITS was a full year. It was a year of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But in 6 months, when I knew exactly what I had to do, I done it, and I got in.
And I just wanted to say something also. As a kid, having felt forced into unschooling and homeschooling, there were a lot of days where I would cry and be so angry at my parents and be like, you're ruining my life. Why are you doing this to me? Like, I hated them, and it was the worst thing, and I couldn't understand. So I think it's so important to just tap into that, because your kids are going to get to an age where they see their friends matriculating and going to varsity and having career paths, and you need to let your kids know that it's okay if they're not there yet. They'll find what they want to do, and once they know what they want to do, they'll excel in it. Because even with my baby brother, he's 15 now, and his friends are in school, and it's like, okay, they're doing exams now, so there's no playtime. This is happening, and there's gonna be a stage where if he's not reassured, he's gonna be like, okay, but what's happening with my life? How am I going to make money? How am I going to live? Am I going to afford to move out? And those were things that I went through. Like, I felt like a failure for so long. And I was like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, I'm going to stay at home forever and have nothing.
Those questions that you've just mentioned, were they not the ones that were the springboard to get you to find your passion and your interests, and to help you decide where you're going, so that you could get a direction?
Yeah, it gave me drive, so when I bring those questions up, I bring it up because when you are at that age, I started working when I was 16. When you're at an age where you're unsure about who you are, like you're not sure about your identity exactly, and because I had been schooled before, I was so structured in thinking a certain way, I needed my parents there to be like, it's okay, you're smart, you're intelligent, you're going to find out what you want to do, you've got passion, you've got drive. I needed that, and so they would push me when I had those down days, when I was really depressed, and it motivated me, because I wanted to do better than the people that were at school with me. Like, I wanted to do better than the lawyers and the medical students. I wanted to show that I could do better without going to varsity, especially because I was rejected. I wanted to prove something to myself and to everyone else who knew me for so long. And yes, it did. It was my springboard to say, I'm going to show you.
You are part of the change that is needed in the world, for us to figure out and reimagine, really, how are we going to reimagine and rebuild all of society, all of our systems. So I wanted to say thank you for that. And I also want to challenge both of you to build environments, law firms, catering companies, that will accept other children who have unschooled. Okay, so become one of those 50 institutions that will employ without those diploma and degrees.
But I think my great personality helped me get those jobs, even though I didn't have the degree.
It's really clear for me how the two of you supported each other in your journeys. Do you think your journeys would have been any different if you were the only child?
With us, not in a competitive way, but we've uplifted each other so much. Like, there's intellectual or like certain things that I would go to Tarsha and be like, listen, like, this is just like, I can't do it. And, sorry, my dad's shouting at me at the back, I don't know why.
Keep quiet, Charles.
Yeah, thank you, where is he? I don't know.
I don't necessarily think that it would have been too different because we did take very different paths. Although we were helping each other, we also understood that she hated it, I was happy. So I would be like, come on, Jenayne, this is awesome. Like, we get to stay at home, and she was like, no. But somehow we did push each other. And even though we knew that we were taking a different path, because like I said, I decided to unschool. She was trying to get that curriculum done and make sure that she has everything she possibly needs to get into university. When I was like, psh, university, I don't need that. But there would still be times we would go to each other. Like, for instance, with the maths. Be like, Mom told me to take a walk again. Like, oh, me too. Let me try help you. So it was a good support system, but I also feel that you can make it without a sibling doing it, because for instance with our little brother, we so much older than him that we're not going through what he's going through right now. We're not going through the unschooling with him. But we are there, but it's the same thing that parents or friends or cousins, any support system can do. Like, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna figure out what you want to do, and you're gonna be able to do it once you decide. And it's just those little hints like, oh, that's interesting you. Take that further, explore that. So in his normal experience of life, we just try to be there to see the things that are sparking interest in him and how he can take that further into his life.
I just want to add to that. Well, I'm the father of those two. You won't believe that, but yeah, it's the truth. The question in terms of if they would have enjoyed it or if their path would have been different, if they weren't there to motivate each other. I just want to add, as a parent, it was not also an easy journey for us. Like Jenayne, that's the eldest one, the one with the white clothes on. She was resisting this, and at 11, 12 in the evening, we would have to have talks with her. So whether you're a single parent or not, or whether you have 5 children that you're going to put through or want to unschool, you will, as a parent, have to spend that time with the kids. Because it's going to be the blind leading the blind, if you're just going to leave it up to them to discuss. But yes, there will be the motivation, the talks that they will have with each other. But as a parent, it's not an easy walk, especially in the initial starting phases. It's not an easy walk having to motivate them, spending that time, inspiring them. You don't want to create an environment where it's going to be a system again or an institution again. But in the initial stages, you will have to make that hour an evening or a day to have that discussions with them. So yeah, my wife did most of them. By that time, I was in an institution, not a mental institution, I mean, or a rehab institution, not that as well. I was in the corporate world until I also decided to step out and spend the time nurturing and growing my kids and exposing them to what is out there. So thanks for giving me also a spot on the stage. I wasn't requested, but thank you.
You just talked about a typical day where you didn't do too much, you lazed around, and obviously as a parent, and coming from quite obviously a strong, I won't say schooling, but my mom was a teacher, so it was like up at a certain time, get dressed, do this, do this, do this, and obviously you saying, so what your advice to parents when you see your kids maybe lazing around all the time, and you as a parent going, is this going to work out? You know.
So we had that as well. So hers was longer than mine, but we had the lazy phase where it was like when you realize, okay, I'm actually free, so I'm going to watch TV for 10 hours today, and I'm going to eat everything in the fridge. Your kids will get bored of it. There's repeats. They're going to get tired of what they're watching. They're going to be like, okay, now can we go explore? Like even with Daniel, one day he'll play Xbox for 16 hours, and then the next day is like, oh no, I actually want to go and do this experiment thing that I saw on some YouTube thing. But the reality is that your kids are learning from anything that they're doing. So whether it's TV, whether it's the internet, and they will get bored of it and actually want to do something, it comes with it. So I think the biggest part about reimagining is getting rid of that fixed belief or structured belief that your kids need to actually be doing something that you legitimize as constructive. That's what you need to get rid of.
I think I'm putting you guys on the spot because you guys weren't the unschooling parents, but if you can, because I don't see unschooling as a panacea for solving all kinds of issues with raising children. So if you could maybe give us a list of do's and don'ts of what unschooling parents should be and shouldn't be doing.
Don't, okay, no, this is actually a do. Do, like, pay attention to your children very closely, even if they are watching TV for 16 hours. If you're paying attention to what they are doing in their free time, you'll notice what is sparking an interest and when you're just being lazy. So with me, I could be watching TV forever, but then I would hear about the O.J. Simpson case, and I'd be like, ooh, this is cool. And that's when a parent kind of needs to step in and be like, okay, so did that interest you? Why did that interest you? Was it the way it was filmed? Was it the law? Was it the way they were arguing? And it's important to just notice what is sparking their interest and try to give them just a little nudge. Like, just...
Also, a big thing is don't compare your kids to someone else's children or to each other. Because we've had family members that would compare us to each other. We're 3 years apart, and she was known as the smart one and the responsible one, and she's liable, and I was just known as the fun rebel that travels the world, goes to Nigeria, even if her parents don't want her to. Like, so don't compare them to each other, because everyone will learn differently, and their stages in life are different. And it's a lot of pressure on your kids when you're comparing them to another kid. It puts too much pressure on you, and it makes it so difficult, because then that makes me feel some type of way to Tarsha, and then I want to compete with, and I want to prove that, oh no, but I am actually smarter, or, yeah. Do you have any other?
And also, don't doubt the decision that you've made. Because the minute you as a parent start doubting it, I know that when my mom would sit like, oh, did I make the right choice? Then I immediately felt it. And I was like, oh, did you make the right choice? But in most of the moments when they were confident in their decision and knew that it's going to work out, there's a plan, that our lives have a plan, and you're going to end up on that path. And when they felt that confidence, like, we have made the right decision, you're going to be fine, it gives you as a child like a sense of ease. And it gives you the freedom to be able to explore, knowing that either way we're going to be fine. And that's what helps you find what you're meant to do and where you're meant to end up.
I've got a homeschooling/unschooling center, and I was just wondering if it would have been easier to do homeschooling or unschooling at a center rather than at home, where you've got the other kids doing the same unschooling that you can be friends with, or a facilitator that can sort of guide you.
So some kids, I think, need some form of structure. And that's when that would be good for them, because they might not have, not necessarily the drive, but they might have it in their mind, but they do need someone to push them along or guide them down the right path. But then there's other kids who, being put in that structure, is going to stop them from exploring and having the freedom to find what it is they want to do. So I think it really depends on the kid. And when we began, it used to be, okay, when we began homeschooling, wake up at this time, eat at this time, we're doing this subject at this time. Yeah, my mom had the little classroom, we had our subjects, it was like normal schooling. And I think she quickly realized that wasn't working for us. And then it became, okay, when you wake up, when you're ready to learn, come tell me. That worked for her. For me, she realized, okay, this isn't working.
So for me, that probably would have worked better. And then for her, she probably would have rebelled against it. It just wouldn't. So we still then maybe would have felt dumb and slow and uninterested in learning on her side. Yeah.
As a law student, I know that you had been to school during your primary years. And do you think that if a student is unschooled from a young age and hasn't learned those skills, do you think that they'll battle at university for, say, someone doing law, to have a background in writing skills, and for someone to say doing engineering to have a background or being used to doing the rigors of algebra and so on?
Okay, so yeah, this is my personal opinion because I'm not an expert. But so, for instance, with me, when I was in school, I never got the timetables. Like up to this day, I still cannot do my timetables. So when I got into WITS, I had to do computational maths because I'm doing a BCom law. And the panic when I knew I have to do a maths subject when I don't know maths was daunting. And I failed computational maths the first time, but somehow, my biggest belief is that when you set your mind to something, even though I didn't have the foundation of maths, and I failed it the first time, and my parents told me it's fine, they made my failure feel like nothing. That's why I wrote on that board, unlearn that failure exists. Because they said, oh, well, you didn't get it right this time, you'll try again. If you don't get it right the next time, you'll try again. And I failed it, and I went back and I redone it, and I killed it. I got a distinction. Same with accounting. My first paper that I ever wrote at WITS was an accounting paper, and I got 17%, 17 for the I thought the world was over. I was like, we made a mistake. I'm going to unregister. We have enough time. Like, it's fine. And my parents were like, no, you've never sat down and written a paper like that. Apart from the SAT and the GED, I had never been in a formal exam sitting session. And I done horribly, but you learn. When you decide that that's what you want to do, that's when you're going to learn. Just because the schooling system says it takes you however many years to learn English and to learn maths, it doesn't mean that's the way it is. Because with my law subjects, I do amazingly. I never struggle with my English. With my GED and my SATs, my English marks were 99%. And that was without ever doing proper high school English. And the thing is, you're going to get there. You might have a couple of bumps. You might have a couple of failures. But you can do it. And the one thing that I will say is that I'm very thankful for my unschooling years, but I'm also very thankful for my university years. So the one thing I do want to say is, as parents, if your child does come to you and says, listen, I want to go to university, you need to try and support that because it has taught me a lot. And the good thing is I'm going there with the prior knowledge of how I can learn without this institution, but I'm also seeing what I can gain from it. From learning to be around people that I don't necessarily like and having to do group work with them, from learning to speak in public and how to figure out the stuff I didn't learn before. I've figured out how to write, I've figured out how to do the maths, I'm getting distinctions, and that was without it. So you can do it, and the reality is if your child decides they want to go into that system, you can get them an English class. You know what I mean? You can send them for extra tutoring to fill that gap. And if they are driven enough and that's what they really want to do and they're passionate about it, they'll make it work and they'll be driven to learn the stuff that they've missed in that amount of time. So a foundation is important, but a foundation doesn't have to necessarily be at a specific stage of your life. I built my foundation to maths and English within my first year at university.
How would you describe your approach to your degree study compared to your classmates that went to normal school? Do you think it's different? Do you approach it very differently? Do you have a different view about why you're there and what you're trying to achieve?
The reason I am most thankful that I done homeschooling and unschooling is because majority of the students that I started first year with were 18, 19, fresh out of high school. I was 22, and a lot of them were at university because they were meant to be at university, because they had finished matric and now this is what they were meant to do. So they weren't there because that's what they wanted. And I've noticed that a lot of students go into university straight from school. They're doing something that their parents told them to do or something that they believe is what they want to do, and they change majors like nobody's business. Like, people change majors 4 or 5 times, or people drop out and come back and drop out and come back because they don't know that this is what they want to do. Whereas with me, I had taken those years of not knowing what I wanted to do and exploring and living and learning. And when I found what I wanted, there was no stopping me. I went in, knew I wanted my law degree, and as difficult as it was, there were nights of crying and panic attacks and wanting to give up, but I had taken the time to figure out that this is what I wanted with my life. So I had a drive that the other students didn't have. And even my learning style, they would party every week and go out. And I was like, no, I am here for a purpose. I had my time to relax and have fun. My parents allowed me to have that. But now I am here to do this. And it gave me such an advantage over the other students because I knew I was there and that's what I focused on.